Often talk about royal rebels on this show, and I, as you know, am fascinated by them. I do like, in fact, when I've been outside the former flat in George Street in sort of corner of West London, where Wallis Simpson lived, to think that all that activity went on way back in the 1930s. It's a bit like a flat apparently behind BBC Broadcasting House, where James Mason, the film actor, lived. Also with, of course, what became his wife and what went on there. Fascinating to think, because you just look at these places now and people are walking past every day, have no idea how much that doorway was in the news, you know, the sort of thing I mean. But way back in 1967, I'm talking to you, of course, it was in the midst of swinging London, wasn't it? The swinging 60s. Yes, absolutely. Now, did you swing, or was it just your pants? Do you know what I'm saying? Platform boots were coming in, weren't they? Long hair, Lord John shops, Carnaby Street. It was the place to be. And literally, apparently, London, I mean, don't look at me like I know, I wasn't there for that. But the thing is, London was the place, wasn't it? The literally epicenter of everything in the world. And there was one royal member who was literally at the epicenter of that world, as she had been during the 1950s. And things really took a strange turn. As ever, let me explain. You think of Princess Margaret, you think of things of more royal occasions, don't you? But as it emerged, Princess Margaret was something of a royal rebel. Loved finding out things about her, been lucky enough to meet her daughter and her son, and, you know, really nice people, and very, very shy and subdued. Obviously not like Princess Margaret. As you know, she made private movies, fun things just in the garden alongside Peter Sellers and a host of other celebrities, and apparently really had a hankering after the world of show business. She was the flamboyant young beautiful princess of the late 40s and 50s, but by 1967 certainly wasn't ready to give up her mantle as the royal rebel, party-loving younger sister of Her Majesty the Queen. So much, of course, that in 1967 this breakthrough album made something of a, well, bombshell. Everybody remembers Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Club's Band. You remember that? Put together, of course, for the 8th studio album by the brilliant mastermanship of George Martin and the Beatles, with hits like When I'm 64, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. This was psychedelic in the heart of psychedelic. But the thing that caught a lot of attention was the fact that the front cover featured so many iconic people, including Einstein, Fred Astaire, and our wonderful own Diana Dawes, alongside Marilyn Monroe. Now, you see, to be on the cover, which had got out, which was being put together, of course, by Peter Blake, everybody who was anybody wanted to know who was going to be on the cover. It was a bit like the Jam, dare I say, situation. Who received the pot of jam? Well, on a lower level, of course, but you know what I'm saying. Now, what was interesting was Paul McCartney and John Lennon really wanted to feature Her Majesty the Queen, but with a fresh alone picture for the album. Apparently Her Majesty the Queen was flattered, but even at the height of swinging 60s London didn't feel it would be appropriate. However, Princess Margaret did. But there was another issue. She only had her pictures taken on a personal level by her husband, Lord Snowdon, the celebrity snapper, who of course had come to the fruition all thanks to marrying Margaret. You get the picture. Now, they couldn't really decide, and it was back and forth, but they had a very good relationship, or should I say the Beatles had a good relationship with Princess Margaret. She'd attended their royal premieres of things like A Hard Day's Night and became personal friends. They'd visited Kensington Palace literally as parties and stuff like that. But according to a very well-placed source, apparently things fell foul simply because Margaret really wanted to be something of a centre of attention, didn't want to be lost in the milieu of other people. You can imagine, this is the sister of the Queen, and this is the 1960s. Apparently, according to a very well-placed source, Margaret took a camera and a huff, literally, and said, well, no, I need to be front and centre. Apparently, John Lennon teased her, saying, well, actually, we were thinking of making this more of a tribute to our late dear friend, the singer, Alma Cogan, who passed away the previous year. This didn't go down well. And apparently that's why, to this day, you don't see Princess Margaret in the lineup on one of the most iconic and famous front album covers to this day in the world. It's interesting to know, isn't it? Neil Sean in the very heart of Yorkshire.